It is 3 in the morning. The room is dark. Your partner, if you have one, is still asleep. Nothing woke you. No sound outside, no movement in the house, no obvious reason you can name. You simply stopped sleeping. One moment you were under, and the next you were not. And now you are lying in the dark with a mind that is unwilling to quiet and hours still to go before the day genuinely begins. Perhaps you get up. The bathroom, a glass of water. You lie back down, calculate how much sleep you might still recover, and watch the ceiling. And then, because this is not a one-time thing, it happens again the following night, and the one after that, reliably, somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, in a window that feels almost scheduled. A body that used to sleep through until morning simply no longer does. Your doctor, if you have mentioned it, has probably said something like, "This is normal. Sleep becomes lighter with age. It is part of getting older." That is partially true, but it is not the full picture. Because what is happening at 3 in the morning is not your body aging out of sleep. It is your body's master clock losing the signal that keeps it running with precision. And those are entirely different problems, with an entirely different solution. And the solution is almost certainly not what anyone has told you to try. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why the 3 in the morning waking happens, not vaguely, but through the specific biological mechanism driving it, and why nearly every standard piece of sleep advice misses it entirely by focusing on what happens at night rather than what is failing to happen in the morning. At around the 9-minute mark, I'm going to give you the single most precisely targeted intervention for this pattern, one that costs nothing, takes 10 minutes, and works by addressing the actual mechanism rather than managing the surface symptom. It is the most evidence-supported intervention in the circadian research for this specific problem. And I am willing to say with confidence that your doctor has almost certainly not mentioned it. I have spent more than 3 decades working with patients over 65. The 3 in the morning waking is among the complaints I hear most consistently. And for most of that time, the standard response, sleep hygiene advice, consistent bedtimes, avoiding screens, limiting naps, was all medicine had to offer. The research now gives us something more precise and more useful. Let me give you a way to understand what your body is doing. Inside the hypothalamus, a small structure at the base of your brain, sits a cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN. It is your body's master clock. Every organ system in your body, your heart, your liver, your immune system, your hormonal rhythms, your digestive processes, your brain's sleep architecture, runs on its own circadian clock. And every one of those individual clocks takes its tempo from the SCN. Think of the SCN as the conductor of a 300-piece orchestra. When the conductor is healthy and precise, every section plays in time. The heart section, the hormone section, the sleep architecture section, all synchronized, all playing the same score on the same beat. The result is a body where sleep arrives when it should, cortisol rises when it should, temperature shifts when it should, and the 3 in the morning is simply a dark and quiet part of the night. After 65, the conductor's signal weakens, not disappears, weakens. The SCN neurons decline in number. The amplitude of the clock signal, the strength of its oscillation, reduces. The timing becomes less precise, and as the signal weakens, each section of the orchestra begins to drift, slightly at first, then further. And the 3 in the morning waking is one of the first places the drift becomes audible. Now let me be specific about what the drift actually does to the body at 3 in the morning, because this is the part that most sleep advice never explains. Cortisol follows a precise circadian rhythm. It is at its lowest level during the middle of the night, suppressed by the master clock to allow deep sleep. And then, in the early morning hours, it begins to rise. In a healthy, well-entrained circadian system, that cortisol rise is timed to begin around 4:30 or 5, peaks around 7 or 8, and is what propels you into alert wakefulness at the appropriate time. In an older adult with a drifted master clock, that rise begins earlier, sometimes at 3, sometimes at 2:30. The cortisol does not care that it is the wrong hour. It is simply following the drifted clock's instructions. And when cortisol rises, it produces the physiological state of alertness. Heart rate increases slightly. Temperature rises. The brain emerges from deeper sleep stages into lighter ones. You wake up, feeling oddly, not particularly groggy, awake in a way that does not match the hour. Have you noticed that when you wake at 3 in the morning, you are not fully confused? That there is a kind of alertness there, unwanted and ill-timed but genuine? That is the cortisol signal. Your body's hormonal morning is arriving at the wrong hour because the clock telling it when to arrive has drifted. There is a second mechanism running in parallel, the core body temperature cycle. Your body temperature follows its own circadian rhythm, dropping in the evening to promote sleep onset and rising in the early morning hours to promote waking. In a drifted clock, that warming begins earlier, sometimes at 3 in the morning rather than 5:30. The temperature rise is one of the body's most reliable waking signals, and it follows the master clock's instructions, drifted or not. And a third, adenosine. Adenosine is the molecule that accumulates in the brain throughout the day and drives the biological pressure to sleep. When you sleep, adenosine is cleared. In a younger adult, adenosine clearance is slower. The drive to stay asleep remains strong into the later morning hours. In older adults, adenosine is cleared more efficiently, which is partly why older adults often feel they need less sleep, but it also means the biological pressure to stay asleep is reduced earlier in the night. In the 3 to 4 in the morning window, when adenosine has been largely cleared and the clock's cortisol signal is beginning to rise prematurely, the conditions that would keep a younger person deeply asleep are simply not present. And then there is the bathroom. Most people who wake at 3 in the morning believe the bathroom is what woke them, but the research on this is consistent and counterintuitive. In the majority of cases, the sequence is reversed. The circadian disruption produces the arousal. Once awake, the urge to urinate is noticed. In a younger adult with a healthy circadian clock, a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, ADH, is secreted at higher levels during the night, suppressing urine production and preventing exactly this arousal. In older adults with drifted circadian rhythms, ADH secretion at night is reduced, so urine production increases, and the sleep that should have protected against it is already lighter due to everything else I've described. The bathroom is not the cause of the waking. It is what happens once the waking has already occurred. I want to tell you about a patient I worked with. No name, but a pattern that has repeated itself more times than I can count. They had been waking between 3 and 3:30 for nearly 3 years. In that time, they had tried every standard sleep hygiene intervention. Consistent bedtime, no screens after 8, no caffeine after noon, a cooler bedroom, no napping. Nothing changed the 3 in the morning window. Their doctor had suggested a sleep aid, which they declined. The waking continued. The exhaustion accumulated. They were in a state of what I can only describe as chronic partial sleep. Never rested, never fully depleted, just perpetually underneath a fatigue that color had gone from everything. When we sat down and looked at their actual day, not their bedtime, not their night, their actual day, something became clear almost immediately. They were not getting morning light. In winter, they had been getting up in the dark and staying inside until mid-morning. In summer, they were getting up, pulling back the curtains from inside, having breakfast in the kitchen, and occasionally going outside briefly. But the specific thing that sets the master clock, direct outdoor light exposure in the first 30 minutes after waking, had not been happening consistently. And without that signal, the clock had drifted, a little each week, until 3 in the morning was what the drifted clock had decided was morning, now. The intervention I told you I'd give you at the 9-minute mark. The master clock is not set primarily by bedtime. It is not set by the hour you close your eyes or the consistency of your sleep schedule, though those matter secondarily. The primary signal that entrains the SCNA, that anchors it to the correct time each day, is light. Specifically, the first natural light that enters the eyes in the morning. The photoreceptors in the human eye include a specialized type R called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells that are dedicated specifically to signaling the SCN. They project directly to the master clock and tell it what time the sun is rising. That signal is the strongest Zeitgeber, the German word the science uses for a time giver, known for the human circadian system. It is more powerful than meal timing, more powerful than exercise, more powerful than any sleep hygiene intervention currently in wide use. And in the majority of adults over 65 with the 3 in the morning waking pattern, it is the signal that has gone missing. Outdoor morning light, even on a cloudy day, because outdoor light is 10 to 100 times brighter than indoor lighting, triggers a cascade through the SCN that recalibrates the clock. It shifts the cortisol rise toward its correct timing. It adjusts the temperature cycle. It anchors the melatonin release to the correct evening hour. And it does all of this with 10 to 20 minutes of morning light exposure within the first 30 minutes of waking. Not at bedtime. In the morning. The problem lives in the morning, not the night. The conductor has not left the stage. The signal has weakened because the information it depends on, the light signal that recalibrates it each day, stopped arriving consistently. Restore the signal and the conductor begins to find the beat again. Not immediately. Over 10 to 14 days, the studies show. But measurably, consistently, and without medication. The clock hasn't broken. It has drifted. And drifted clocks can be reset. 3 things. All of them address the actual mechanism rather than the symptom. The first is the morning light anchor. Within 30 minutes of waking each morning, go outside. Not for exercise. You can exercise later. Specifically to receive light. Stand or sit facing the sky. Not directly at the sun, but with your eyes open and your face toward the brightness. No sunglasses. 10 to 20 minutes. If outdoor access is limited, a 10,000 lux light therapy lamp placed within 18 inches of your face for 20 to 30 minutes achieves a comparable circadian signal. The consistency matters more than the duration. This is the one non-negotiable. Everything else in circadian health is secondary to this. The second is the temperature sleep signal. Your core body temperature dropping is the physiological trigger for sleep onset. You can work with this mechanism deliberately. In the 60 to 90 minutes before your target bedtime, take a warm bath or shower, 10 minutes at a comfortable warm temperature. The subsequent cooling of your body as you exit and dry off is a powerful sleep onset signal that mimics the natural temperature drop the circadian system is supposed to produce. Keep the bedroom at between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Cooler than most people expect, but within the range the research consistently identifies as optimal for sleep maintenance in older adults. The third is the meal timing anchor. Food is a secondary circadian signal, what researchers call a Zeitgeber. Your digestive system has its own clock, and it takes partial timing information from when meals arrive. Eating your first meal within 60 minutes of waking, and your last meal at least 3 hours before sleep, creates 2 reliable daily anchors that reinforce the master clock's calibration. The specific content of those meals matters less for circadian purposes than their timing. Consistent timing, repeated day after day, contributes to the stability of the overall clock signal. Go back to where we began. It is 3 in the morning. The room is dark. Nothing woke you. Except that something did. Not a sound or a movement. Something internal. A cortisol signal arriving at the wrong hour. A temperature cycle warming too early. A master clock whose primary calibration input had been missing day after day until 3 in the morning was what it had drifted to believing was the appropriate time to begin the day. That is not aging. That is a signal problem with a signal solution. If someone you know has been living with this pattern, writing it off, enduring it, filing it under getting older, please share this video with them. Because the research on what causes the 3 in the morning waking and what genuinely addresses it is available and actionable. The only thing missing was knowing where to look. Tomorrow morning, not tonight, tomorrow morning, I want you to do one specific thing. The moment you get up, go outside. Stand in the morning light for 10 minutes. Face the sky. No sunglasses. Just 10 minutes before anything else. And then pay attention that night to whether your sleep feels any different. Because next week I'm going to show you what happens to the cortisol rhythm when morning light exposure is applied consistently over 14 days. The specific hormonal data from studies tracking this shift in adults over 65. You will be able to see what is happening inside the clock as it recalibrates. And if you start tomorrow morning, by the time next week's video arrives, the data and your own experience may be telling you the same thing. Come back. Bring what you noticed. One important note before you go. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for the advice of your personal physician. If your sleep disruption is severe, affecting your safety or your daily function significantly, please speak with your doctor. There are underlying medical conditions that can contribute to sleep disruption that require professional evaluation. The interventions discussed here are appropriate for most healthy adults over 65, but should be discussed with your physician if you have any concerns about your individual circumstances. The goal of this video is not to replace that conversation. It is to give you a more complete picture to bring into it.